quite remember which came first or where it goes. It's a little bit mad. But we ended up at CBS in London, CBS Records, and they wanted to record this Quasar one. And they liked Selket, Ramases and Selket, they liked that. And so we had a name. So they said, and we really like that, but we don't know what Quasar one is. So we said, well, we think it's a double-headed sun in this, you know, in our solar system. So he said, so they said, well, actually, when you said it and you sang it, it sounded like Crazy One. So why don't you just say Quasar One? You know, don't you, you know, touch the sun, just for you, just for you. And we said, no, but it's Quasar One. Don't you know that I touched the sun just for you, just for you? They said, well, I think actually commercially it would be better, Crazy One. Now we've got a name, they don't like the words that we're singing, so we did that, and it came out. And then we went on the Eamon Andrews show, and when we walked down Oxford Street and around London the next day, everybody recognised us. It was quite amazing. From one appearance on the Eamon Andrews show, and just nothing seemed to happen. So we thought, well, I don't know about this, and anyway, it wasn't what we really wanted. We wanted Quasar One. So it's not, you know, Crazy One doesn't mean anything to us. We want Quasar One out, not that. So we went to America with our own money, and we went to New York. And we thought, well, we'd go and see some record companies in New York and see whether they like Ramases and Selket and our material. Before we went, I think we just made a little tape by ourselves with Ram playing the guitar and us singing, and we took those, just ordinary tapes that we made ourselves, and we went to these record companies with just that. And they sort of said, well, you know, it sounds really interesting, and, you know, and really it's for the West Coast this, you're really in the wrong town, you're really in the wrong place. You want to be on the West Coast, you guys would go down and bomb there, you really should go there. So we said, wow, it's a long way for us to then go, right, it's the same distance that we come from England to go again. Well, we hadn't got the money, so we couldn't do that. So we were there for 3 weeks. So we went around, and somebody said, look, go up and see this guy called Alan Douglas. He was like an underground person, I think that's what they called them, what they did in those days. And he was in with people like Timothy O'Leary, that was with the Beatles, with the drugs. I must say from now, we did not do drugs. We never did drugs. We didn't do drugs in America. The guy Alan Douglas knew that we didn't have drugs, nothing to do with it at all. All that we did and all the things that came to us were just purely as we were. We didn't even smoke cigarettes. We didn't drink. So what we did from there, we went from that office, and he introduced us actually to a guy called John Paul Jones. And he was a comedian. And this John Paul Jones was going back to England the next day. And that night, so we met him, and they said, have a word with him, and he's got a manager called Harvey Lisberg back in London, so maybe he might be able to go from the manager's side. He might be able to help you when you go back to England, and then maybe go back to LA and do it from that way around. He said, I'm sure that Harvey will be interested in you. I'm sure he will love you. So he said, as soon as you get back to England, I'll meet you, and you'll go up to Manchester. I'll probably meet you in Manchester. You can go up to Manchester. And, well, we lived in Sheffield anyway, so we went to Manchester. And we met him, and we met Harvey. And Harvey said, right, I've got a studio in Strawberry Studios. We'll make some proper demo discs with your songs, and I'll get a couple of people to come in and play guitar, and we'll put the drum thing on, and we'll make a little thing it's proper that I can take round to show people. So we did this with some members of Hot Legs, and Eric Stewart was with Hot Legs. He did the controls, and I think Graham Gouldman played guitar, and I'm not sure whether we met Lol, but I know that I didn't know about Hot Legs. I just knew that we were in the studio with these people, and we were, in essence, we sang all our things. We sang Quasar One, don't you know, in our voice and everything. And Harvey took it round, and everything went quiet for quite a while, and we wondered what was happening, and nothing was happening. And then suddenly we put on the radio, and there was this song come out, I'm a Neanderthal man, you're a Neanderthal girl. Let's make Neanderthal love in this Neanderthal world. And we stopped the car. We said, that's our sound. Queensland one, don't you know? It was our sound. It was Hot Legs. It was from Strawberry Studios. It was the people that worked with us. They'd stolen our sound. So we got in touch, we rang up, and they said, well, it's not really like that. And it was a hit. And it was our sound. They stole it. So whether they felt anything, I don't know. The next thing I know, oh yes, we'll make your music. We'll do you an album. Harvey got with Vertigo, Phonogram Records, with Vertigo, the label. He said, and he's got a 2-album deal, and so they're paying for the album, so we'll make it at Strawberry Studios with Hot Legs as your backing group. So I said, well, okay. So they just got this one single that was hit, and they got nothing else. They got an album out, something like, I don't know, it was called School Stinks or something, under Hot Legs, and it didn't do anything. And then they made our album, ours came out, and it had good reviews and everything. But the next thing, we didn't really, I don't think, got promoted properly, because the next thing we knew, that Ramases had been offered the Moody Blues tour to front for the Moody Blues on their tour, and they wanted Ramases. Well, I think with Hot Legs being our backing group, they refused. I think it must have been what happened. They didn't refuse. They said, well, you can't do it without us. So, you know, Ramases is nothing without us. So we're going to go on it. We were devastated, because that meant from that day on we had an album out on the market with a group now that wouldn't play with us, and we had these original music and things, and they had really pinched our thing, which they got a hit record with, which should have perhaps been ours, and people would have heard about our music, and maybe, you know, they should have heard about our music at that time. And I still think they should hear about our music, because we were really caring about what was happening to the world and how things were going, and it was very disturbing, and it really certainly disturbed my husband, and he couldn't get over. And then of course that was a really big knock for him, to think that these people had done that, you know, because that wasn't really a nice thing to do, was it, to anybody? So of course we couldn't make the second album with them. So we went to London, and we found a producer, and we found a lovely guy called Robert Young, who did orchestrations and illustrated all the things, and he was really sympathetic, and he did some beautiful things with our music, and we were really pleased with him. So we did this music, which was, it was as much as what we could do to put out how we felt, and it did turn out, I thought, very beautiful in many parts of it, and I felt we did get the feeling over of what we were about and what we were trying to achieve and say, if we were allowed to say it. And so we did that, and a lot of people liked it, but again, it was too big a production, it was too much for us to perform, so we couldn't go on the road with it, we couldn't perform it anywhere. The only thing we could do is then play it and us to be there and talk, because it was too much a bigger production. How could we put that, with not being a name, onto any kind of show, to perform it anywhere? It would have cost too much money. So I'm afraid that we actually didn't do ourselves maybe a lot of good with that, but that was the way it was. We were meant to have a third album, actually. There was a third album promised. We had all the music for the album. We had no lyrics for this album, because we felt that with lyrics we just didn't feel there was much more we could say. And we made this wonderful tape up of our new album, and we were going to call it Skylark. We did the artwork, and we had the skylark cut out, the bird cut out, and we painted this beautiful sky with lovely white fluffy clouds and beautiful blue through the skylark's body. meaning again, like glass top coffin, is that life is like when you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain. You see through the mountain and you go through the mountain. The coffin is just for your shell that's worn out, and your spirit rises and go through the glass top mountain, and the coffin, and the skylark, the bird, was flying through into the sky, and the spirit was released, and so it goes into the universe, and we join other things. You don't die, it's a glass top mountain. When you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain. When you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain. When you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain. When you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain. When you die, you don't die, it's a glass top mountain.